Well, the big story this evening, viewers Sharjeel Imam, Safoora, Zargar, Asif, Tanna and their accomplices. You know these names by heart and these faces very well. They've all been hailed by the ecosystem as the last fearless voice of dissent and the truth in this country. And in a setback to them now, remember how yesterday the Delhi High Court set aside the trial court's February order discharging them in the Jamia violence case of 2019. They've been charged under rioting, unlawful assembly and other offences. Now, the Delhi High Court, while reversing the decision, said the accused were in the front line of the mob and raised Delhi Police Murdabad slogans. The High Court also said that the right to peacefully assemble is subject to restrictions and that damage to public property and peace is not protected. And despite the court verdict, some in the ecosystem, not surprising but shocking still, they continue to back the accused and instead raise questions on the courts.
Almost all the courts sometimes play to their tunes, and we want the rule of law to be upheld. We want justice to be the guidance for the courts, and for that day we wait.
Well, this is not the first time. Remember, earlier also certificates were handed out by Lutyens ecosystem to these alleged rioters who have, through their actions, actually undermined the cause of free speech and unlawful protests, which are the cornerstones of a functioning democracy. From Congress leaders P. Chidambaram, Udit Raj to activists like Yogendra Yadav, Harsh Mandir, all of them have come out in support of these accused and have claimed that the cops are trying to frame members of the minority community. And tell us now whether who is really crushing democracy. It's the Modi government, as has been alleged by several in the opposition, or those who give cover fire to anarchists in India who actively undermine peace and democratic rights by allegedly resorting to unlawful means of protest. Remember what Rahul Gandhi said, how he lectured India from abroad, from the United Kingdom, about how democracy is being crushed by the Modi government. Here's a reminder.
How would you react if something, a structure 3.5 times Europe suddenly went non-democratic? Right? That's happened already. That's not something that is going to happen in the future. That's already happened. But there's no reaction. And you know, if we're talking about Europe, that's the thing that shocks me. There's no reaction. Right? And of course, there are reasons for there not being a reaction. There is sort of trade and there's money and stuff like that. But Indian democracy is a public good. And if you're looking at democratic, you know, the democratic structure, it is the single most important public good.
Now let's remind you of what the Prime Minister has said just yesterday. He warned that some are trying to harm the strong foundation of our constitutional institutions. He clearly spelled out how some raise questions every day on court's verdicts in our country.
आज भारत का सामर्थ्य अगर फिर बुलंदी की तरफ जा रहा है तो इसके पीछे हमारी एक मजबूत नींव है। ये नींव हमारी संवैधानिक संस्थाओं की है, हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस की है। इसलिए आज भारत को रोकने के लिए हमारी इस नींव पर चोट की जा रही है। जब कोर्ट कोई फैसला सुनाता है तो कोर्ट पर सवाल उठाए जाते हैं, न्यायिक प्रणाली पर हमले होते हैं। आप सब देख रहे हैं, कुछ दलों ने मिलकर भ्रष्टाचारी बचाओ अभियान छेड़ा हुआ है।
Let's quickly open this up. We have Vineet Goenka, spokesperson of the BJP, along with Desh Ratan Nigam, lawyer. We also have Sarfaraz Wani, lawyer himself, and advocate Nikhil Jain joining us, completes the panel. Now, I want to quickly first up focus on what Binoy Viswam has said. And Nikhil Jain, perhaps you can explain this to our viewers, because we played out what Rahul Gandhi said, how he raised questions at several institutions. Of course, he's been casting aspersions on the very idea of democracy in our country, and there has been a factual rebuttal that has come in from several parts of the country to what Rahul Gandhi has stated in United Kingdom. But the fact remains herein, after what the Delhi High Court yesterday said, and I can highlight parts of the judgment for you to put this in context. Where is the doubt, sir? Where is the doubt? Why are we still talking about not wanting to trust the courts? In fact, he goes on to say that all courts play to their tunes. What does Mr. Viswam mean by this?
So, see, Ms. Walia, when we say that the institutions in this country are not compromised and whatever decision that a particular institution gives, there's nothing wrong with that. We also have to realize that the trial court indeed did discharge Mr. Imam and the other accused in the case. It was the High Court that overturned the verdict. So I'm not saying that the High Court is playing with the malice or that the High Court is not...
And don't you think, Mr. Jain, don't you think there has to be some merit in the case for the High Court to come out to say and rather direct to expunge parts of the trial court judgment that had been critical of the conduct of the Delhi police?
But Ms. Walia, do notice that the High Court has very clearly said that we are not returning any finding on the merit. So the High Court is also not saying that these people are guilty or these people are not guilty. It is merely that the trial court had discharged Mr. Imam and the other accused in the case. So it is important for everybody to understand the difference between discharge and acquittal. Discharge is when the court finds that there is such a lack of prima facie case, there is such a lack of a case on the face of it, that trial itself cannot proceed, right? So the trial court was of the opinion that this case is completely bogus, which is why they discharged the accused and did not conduct a trial and then subsequently acquit them.
But why are we still focusing on what the trial court had stated, wherein we should in fact focus on what the Delhi High Court has now maintained, because it's a very pointed judgment, sir.
No, Ms. Walia, but in that case, the accused have the full right to go before the Supreme Court. And very often you will find that judgments of the trial court or, High Court or orders of the High Court are reversed by the Supreme Court. So an order of the High Court cannot be final, and it is something that you
But for now that the High Court has pressed these fresh charges, why should there be any doubt? Why should anyone talk about any court for that matter? Mr. Jain, why should anyone talk about any court for that matter at any level? Why should judiciary be spoken of in terms of playing to the tunes of someone? It's absolutely unacceptable. We're seeing this narrative play out by certain in the opposition who are going and peddling this out in United Kingdom as well, and it's most unacceptable. I want Vineet Goenka to come in.
Ms. Kristen, Ram to you, to my co-panelists, and Ram to the audience who are watching this particular part. We have clearly seen in 2019, and I can speak the date, 13 December 2019, where this gentleman, he deliberately spoke against the idea of India, deliberately instigated the people there. He pushed the mob to take law in his hand. And then he admitted what he did on 13 December 2019 in Aligarh Muslim University. And he spoke about on 16 January 2020. Both of them are in public domain. Unfortunately, the Break India forces, the media, or the people who do not like India as an idea, or the government of today, they all came together, supported him. Today, I feel little relief that at least the court has taken cognizance of the plea of the police and all the other people, and they have listened. It's a clear case of insurrection. They're trying to create a narration of dissent, and we have to distinction this between dissent and insurrection. It's a case where it was deliberate attempt by an individual to create law and order situation, create a divide between two societies, religions, and also instigate those people who are helpless, who are marginalized on the lines of religion. So I think there should be a big punishment. The court should take cognizance of this. It should expedite this thing. And two more lines. The gentleman before me, his name. Today he said there is chance. Yeah, Mr. Jain said there are chances that the High Court may take cognizance, but what has been detected or been said by the lower court is true and will hold true. Now the same gentleman or the same types of gentlemen would come out tomorrow if there is a case of Rahul Gandhi's. Unfortunately, if some court stays the order of the court, they would say that lower court was motivated. See, this narration of educated and haves. But
in that case, if a higher court does put a stay or rather stays the conviction of Rahul Gandhi, as was done by the Surat court, then no one should have a problem with it. Why don't we just leave it to the judiciary? Why are we always indulging in this kind of a political blame game?
So these are the same people who twist judgments as per their convenience. and they are highly qualified. They are probably more
It's
qualified
politics
than me.
of convenience.
My request to them is don't break country.
It's politics
Don't
of
put your own
convenience. They
interests,
will want the court
please.
to put a stay on Rahul Gandhi's conviction, and that will be welcomed by one and all. But when it comes to cases such as this, when it doesn't suit their narrative or their ideology, they will raise concerns and go on to back the likes of Sharjeel Imam. Sarfaraz Wani, what do you make of what the Delhi High Court has ruled, and why this kind of a backing, non-stop backing of all of these writers? Because the court in as many words says you must feel free to protest, but why resort to violent means?
See, the first thing is that it should not be a matter of debate right now. Why? Because legally speaking, when we see the stage of charge and discharge, this is under the relevant provision of law 227, 228 of the criminal procedure, which says that even a case which is less than prima facie, so technically speaking, even a weak case where there is no evidence or a very weak evidence, that is to be charged. So charging does not mean they're involved. There has to be a full-blown trial now. There have to be evidence which have to be adduced before the court, and then the court, after a full-blown trial, will have to see whether the court will convict them or acquit them. So charging is no way a guilt of their crime.
But by putting these charges, Mr. Wani, the court has highlighted how the accused were in the first line of the mob. Delhi Police Murdabad slogans were raised. Accused consciously chose to be part of the mob which was carrying dandas in their hands. The court has admitted to all of this.
No, court cannot admit to these things at this stage. Legally speaking, this is stage of charge. The court sees what is on the record. So legally, if you, I think if they...
So these are excerpts from the order copy.
Trial court might sustain the trial court order, because there have been a lot of loopholes which have been given by the trial court order. Like the trial court had charged only one person and it has discharged 11 persons. Why? Because the photographs in the challan which have been seen have been given only of one person, Ilyas.
No, the simple question is, Mr. Wani, when the court comes out to say, and I'm going to quote from the order copy so that there's no confusion, there's no grey area. We're talking in black and white. The court says, and this is about, of course, Iqbal Tanna says he can be seen to be part of the unlawful assembly and that he himself has not denied it. Court says no clear indication by way of any statement or witness or any video or photograph to show that he was part of the violent mob. Thereafter goes on to talk about how it cannot reach a conclusion that no case at all is made out against Tanna, and similar language has been used against the other accused as well in each of the cases where these charges have been framed. My only limited question is, why so much sympathy when a court comes out to say and note that, look, these people did resort to violent means. Look, they did end up inciting people and they are partly responsible for creating a riot-like situation. Why the sympathy? Why do people play the Muslim card?
That's what I'm saying. The question is, you are saying why so much sympathy? I'm reversing it. Why so much venom against these people when the court had charged them?
There is no venom against anybody. One is only asking you to follow the court's order. One is only asking you not to cast aspersions on what the judiciary is maintaining. Because in doing so, Mr. Wani, you are doubting the judiciary of the country, and that's the limited point I'm trying to make. Let's not speak over each other. Deshratan Nigam can come in and perhaps give you a rebuttal. Mr. Nigam.
Kritsween, one thing is very clear. At the stage of framing of charges, the courts look into prima facie evidence. They don't believe or disbelieve anybody. Here the courts went into the social media post duly admitted by the accused person. It was from their own account, the video clips, the statement of witnesses, which prima facie gave a material for trial. And the trial will take place, and the prosecution will try to establish that these people are guilty, and the defense will try to prove them innocent. And therefore, the courts have, in their own wisdom, found out from the material on record that the charges have to be framed against these accused. And these are very serious charges, very serious charges. So it's not about sympathy or no sympathy. It is about the rule of law has to be established. If these people were part of the mob, an unlawful assembly, and destroyed the property and attacked the police and attacked India's democracy, they need to be punished. A lesson has to be created. Law also has to work as a deterrent. so that in future nobody does such kind of crimes.
And look at how we see people downplaying it. I mean, the matter has reached the courts repeatedly. There are serious observations that have been made time and again, and there you have people say that the Delhi police should come up with a better script, that the government of the day is trying to divide the country. I mean, can we move past these narratives, because they're really not doing any good to anybody? I do see Nikhil Jain wanting to come in. Mr. Jain.
There are 3 points that I'd like to make about the discussion that we've had so far. One, that they're powerful. I think you better than I that the Delhi police has now made it a habit of having a section 144 all the time imposed in most parts of the city. In fact, Justice U.U. Lalit, who was the Chief Justice of India he was the last Chief Justice of India, even he has the... Ms. Walia, I'm unable to hear you.
Yeah. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Justice Lalit has pointed out that he is disturbed with the fact how routinely 144 is being imposed as a matter of practice. So, if you make the entire city a 144 zone and then somebody walks around, you say that they're in an unlawful assembly, I don't think that's a very valid argument. Secondly, when you say that these students were saying...
But here's the Delhi High Court saying, Mr. Nikhil Jain, if the violent mob had been allowed to march on the streets of Delhi to the which was a curfew-bound area, law and order could have been endangered.
Actually, there was no case of a violent mob. Some students yelling Police Murdabad or Pilana Murdabad or this Neta
Some students
Murdabad
holding dandas in their hand, Mr. Nikhil Jain. Is that a peaceful way to protest? Mr. Jain, we're clearly turning a blind eye to the facts that have been stated and perhaps even taken cognizance of by the court.
I would like your assistance to please point out what are the specific incidents of violence that these students did.
Let me answer that.
Okay, Deshratan Nigam wants to legally counter it. Let's keep it to the legal domain. We're putting out those visuals. We're talking about the court also, Mr. Jain, also taking note of the fact that there were people who were walking around with sticks in their hands, that the police was also attacked by some of these alleged protesters. But since you're talking about it within the legal framework, let Deshratan Nigam respond to you. Mr. Nigam.
Well, the courts have clearly observed, the High Court has clearly observed about the violence that had taken place, police being attacked, the private and public property being burned, put on fire. Are these not incidents? The police was anticipating it, and therefore 144 was justified. It proved police right. Please remember that. The 144, I will talk about this case, I will not generalize. Therefore, in this particular case, police's apprehensions were proven correct. And the court has observed it from how the barricades were attacked, how they tried to march and cross over despite the unlawful assembly 144 in force. They were students, please understand, educated class of people, not illiterate. They have to understand the rule of law. If they cross that boundary, they need to be punished. No soft approach. Please understand that. And the police were attacked, police personals were attacked, DTC buses were burned. Please understand that. So these are specific incidents of violence which has been noted by the court. So to say that these point out specific, then you are
an important point.
Okay. Nikhil Jain, you've had your say. I'm just left with a couple of minutes, so I'll quickly let Sarfaraz Wani also come in, because he also wants to make a point. Freedom of expression should be protected, but law does not guarantee the right to protest. Mr. Wani, the court itself making note of the same, saying that the police were pelted with stones. Protest by violent means can never be a part of democracy. And there you have people go out of India, lecture Indians on how democracy is dead here.
I will rebut to Deshratan Nigam ji that what about the trial court order, when trial court order in a way talked about how this is about cherry picking. How the
it's
people,
gone.
12
that
people,
order is gone.
cherry picked.
That order is gone.
Sir, who knows this order will also go? Who knows this order will also go?
Okay, very well. And if it will go, Mr. Sarfaraz Wani, then everyone will be more than happy, because the sooner we get to the end of this, the happier all of us will be. We don't want to really engage in this kind of a political bickering. It's not what we want, especially when it comes to a sensitive story such as this. The fact remains that the Delhi High Court has reversed the decision of the trial court that discharged these important ecosystem icons that were falsely asserted as dissenters, and it's concerning that today as well they continue to receive that kind of backing. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this very special debate. With that, it's a wrap. Slipping into a very short break.